From Toronto and streaming globally on Jess TV, Roku, Meta, and the NCG television network. Today's guest is Arthur Kennedy, who appears to be hosting today, but it's actually me. He is a healthcare strategic working in corporate systems, and he's a consultant, a wellness advocate, and his work bridges emerging health technologies and practical people-focused solutions. He has decades of experience working across Canada and the US, and of course Europe. And Arthur is used to advising employers, insurers with innovative private and public healthcare solutions. So from co-founding a health management company to helping bring world care to Canada, his passion is clear. It's to advance medical breakthroughs, employee wellness, and access to primary care through innovative solutions like GoToDoctor. So in this conversation today, we're going to explore how to create new health paradigms beyond the broken systems, from addressing root causes instead of symptoms, and to integrating nutrition into healthcare, to restoring trust in a system that is under strain. So thank you so much, Arthur, for joining me today and for, working with me through all the technical problems that we were having.
But isn't that reflective of our health system?
It is. I feel like this is backwards.
Exactly. So we really appreciate the opportunity, Angela. And I think, this channel is fantastic. Unlike a lot of your guests who are actual practitioners, I'm not. I do not have any medical background. But whenever I start to do a talk or something, I like to kind of tell a little story. Okay. And the story is actually... it's from a tape by a guy named Pat Riley, who was an NBA basketball coach. And he told a story about going with his wife, whitewater rafting in the Colorado River. And he said the guide had two rules. One, everybody wore a life jacket all the time. And the second rule was, if you went into the water, and he said, basically, everybody's going to end up in the water at some point on this trip. You have to participate in your own rescue. Mm-hmm. And I've used that idea that when we engage with the public health system or any health system, you have to participate in your own rescue. And I think your channel is really allowing people to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that will become much more important as we go forward. Mm-hmm. I do, when you say our system's broken, I think it's more overwhelmed. And I can sort of outline
I've
outlined 6 points where I think it's overwhelmed. But I mean, I look at, for those that know Toronto, there's the Gardner Expressway. It's a highway down, mm-hmm. and, it's a great road, except the fact that it has far, far, far more traffic than it was ever expected.
Yes.
And I think that's part of what we're facing. So if I can just go through some of these things, like the first of all is with the healthcare system, we haven't completed the job. Mm-hmm. First thing was
just like the construction in Toronto, it's never done.
John Douglas, when his view on public healthcare was $1 for proactive and $1 for treatment. Mm-hmm. Like he wanted both funded equally. Well, we funded the treatment side, but we have not done a lot on the proactive side. And he was a big believer in public health and public education. And I think our system has sort of let down there. Mm-hmm. All on treatment and not on actual prevention, which is a lot of the topics that you've been going over the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. Second area is aging population, which is obvious. We all kind of can know that. But a third thing that a lot of people don't really realize is the supply of physicians and treatment is actually shrinking.
Yeah.
And it's due to a number of causes. One, our aging, our schools are not producing enough. I mean, obviously we've heard about immigration, but other things, that doctors are having more and more side hustles. There's more and more other opportunities for them, either through pharmaceutical or through corporate or through private clinics or other services. So they're being taken more and more out of the system, which makes it more and more challenging for our people to get the kind of healthcare they need. we're seeing the fourth one is technology changes. We're seeing so much technology coming into the system can't absorb it.
Mm-hmm.
Your doctors are getting frustrated. I mean, I had a physician tell me, I've got patients walking into my practice who have diseases that I've never heard of before. We're getting involved in self-diagnosis. This is a real challenge, and it's going to be, because technology is rapidly increasing in terms of the impact on healthcare, not shrinking. So that'll be continuing. So your basic family GP is overwhelmed. I mean, the typical thing is there's about 200 to 300 symptoms, and there's about 10,000 diseases.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of diagnosis is very, very challenging.
Yes.
And, where someone comes in and says, well, I have these symptoms, therefore I have.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why our system is designed to basically treat the symptoms. That's how it's been functioning, which is dysfunctional, in my humble opinion.
Well, absolutely.
And he's actually being humble because he isn't a doctor, that is correct, but he works with a lot of doctors, and he's very well versed in the medical system. And he is very pioneering on new technologies and studies and research to try and implement integrative and innovative solutions for some things that are going on, like cancer.
I actually do them on myself. So, Angela, you've certainly known that with the journey I've been going through. But number 5 on the list for sure, and this is something I know you and many of your guests see, is metabolic problems.
Yes.
That is having such an impact on the public health system.
And it's something most doctors never address because they know so little about it.
I never had a doctor talk to me about insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I never had. But I want to give a little story because I did a little research on this.
Okay.
Lucky Charms. Okay, Lucky Charms cereal.
Okay. Chemical shitstorm in a box.
Well, it came on the market in 1964.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled it off the shelf because it didn't have enough sugar in it.
Oh,
so
interesting.
they reintroduced it. And as you're right, it's basically processed grains,
food
sugar,
coloring,
and dye.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically candy.
Yeah.
And the sales have gone up in lockstep with obesity rates in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be surprised to know that Lucky Charms sells 90 million boxes a year in the United States.
I'm not surprised at all. I worked in advertising. It's all marketing, and it's targeting children.
Yes, well, exactly. But what's the price our health system's paying for this? I
know. I feel like they should be the ones providing healthcare plans. To be honest,
maybe a tax on sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I don't want to get political here, but I mean,
it's the drug nobody talks about because it's legal.
Well, it's a massive
it's in everything.
Because you can just chart and look at, where the rates are and what is happening, and it continually going. And we're seeing it in society. I mean, we're seeing it with the Blue Jays in the new stadium. All the seats are wider. Mm-hmm. Because we are gaining, as a society, gaining a lot of weight. So that is playing out in the healthcare system, because the metabolic is leading to chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac problems, and, cancer. This is what we're seeing. So metabolic, our system was not made for these kinds of health issues. And the one that, your favorite one is the pharma industry. And
that's my favorite. Yay, I love pharma.
Well, no, I'm just sort of thinking it's sort of one of the things that we're trying to challenge is the dominance of the pharma industry. And and I look at, I think one of the things amusing is I've started a year ago started doing oil pulling with
I did that yesterday actually.
Yeah, just doing well. If you go on any dental site, there is all kinds of people telling stories of what a positive impact them, but you always hear time and time, there's been no clinical trials.
No, my dentist is very forward thinking. I think even maybe met her at one of my tastings.
Yeah.
She actually was telling me about how one of her patients has done it, and she's not super holistic. Like, she still does fluoride and stuff, but she doesn't make me do it. But she does recommend it, and actually chewing on cloves for dental pain. And
Oh, for you. I mean, it's only been around for, thousands of years. But the thing about no clinical trials, well, why no clinical trials?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I actually wrote about this yesterday. Sorry for interrupting you, but fluoride, there only was a small localized study like over 30 years ago, and there's no long-term side effects. They've never done any real big long-term studies, and they're putting fluoride in everything. But then something natural, and it's not naturally occurring fluoride also, that's like a whole other thing. But then they went and put it in our water, they put it in our teeth, they're putting it in all the dental products and stuff, and what it actually is very questionable. I don't want to get into that on this whatever, but with something like coconut oil pulling and clove, which are completely natural and have definitely no long-term or hurtful side effects, are like taboo.
But when you look at it, who makes money off it?
Well, that's exactly it.
And that's what the coconut oil. Okay, if a clinical trial proved that coconut oil works for oil pulling, well, no one's really making any money, and that's I think
except for the farmers, maybe.
Well, no, I mean the coconut business would increase, but I mean. Yeah. You're not getting the billions of research and all the new technology of drills and whatever that are going on in dentistry. Anyway, that sort of goes a little off topic, but I think,
sorry, I love these little random tangents, though.
Well, I mean, that's sort of the fun of it. But I think kind of one of the things you sort of wanted to talk about is sort of what's my view of what's coming down the pipe. What's the future look like? So I
haven't even asked you a question yet. So
okay, well, go ahead. Sure.
Okay. I do agree with you. I've actually said this not in this exact context, but like there's enough resources for everybody, but it's the systems that make it so competitive and constraining. If everybody used the road when they felt, aligned to do something, or they felt that they wanted to do something, but not in this 9 to 5 grid, because you can tell it's getting close to rush hour, because now people are trying to beat rush hour, and rush hour starts at 2 p.m. and ends at like 8. so I totally agree with you on that. But I do think that the system, in just that it affects sorry, I'm speaking Spanish. It only treats or really looks at symptoms is what's dysfunctional about it, because there's no profit to all these natural solutions.
Well, as I said, I think the original idea behind Tommy Douglas's original idea for the public health system would be addressing those things, would be talking about nutrition and talking about preventative stuff, which has sort of been eliminated from it. And we've really focused on the cost, the actual treatment strategy. But I mean, if you start to look at metabolic issues early on, it's just some relatively minor lifestyle changes can really have a massive impact down the road. Well, we're not doing that. And, when someone has high blood sugar, it's not, we don't explore, why? We give a prescription of metformin and on to the next patient.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
and a prescription for stress or, depression or whatever, rather than lifestyle solutions.
This is the question. I never had a doctor talk to me about insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
I had one talk to me about cortisol, about being high cortisol and what the impact is. But he's not a doctor anymore. He is a doctor, of course he is, but he's doing research on using meditation for post-traumatic stress disorder. So he is a really creative physician that perhaps other physicians are more aligned with the pharma strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Problem, prescription.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things you did ask me is sort of to look at the future, and I'm kind of...
No, we'll get there.
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about nutrition, and we'll get more into that. But what you didn't talk about, and what I'd like to address, is emotional and energetic health to reduce the strain on our healthcare systems, because everybody is so stressed out, and we're in this rat race.
Yes. So, and from that perspective, I mean, I think that certainly, I mean, part of it I want to talk about a little bit about employers.
Okay.
Employers are in a very difficult situation because they don't want to get involved in healthcare, but they are being dragged into it.
Mm-hmm.
And because the challenges within the healthcare system, they want to try and get their own employees, if they have disabilities, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think what is, we're seeing now 2/3 of all disability claims in Canada have some element of mental health. And so.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
And I think what you're talking about is sort of fundamentally a Western medicine approach. Mm-hmm. Western medicine is we identify a problem, broken leg, surgery fix it. So we're dealing with problem solving. And up until now, I mean, we've looked at mental health as separated from physical health. Mm-hmm. Like you start to have metabolic syndrome and you start gaining weight and your cortisol and your stress, et cetera, it all contributes. You start feeling depressed, mm-hmm. leads to mental health issues. All this is related, and we're only really starting to look, and which is sort of, I would imagine for a lot of Eastern healthcare, ridiculous, but we're only really looking at bodies holistically. Mm-hmm. And, the person's diagnosed with cancer, yes, there's going to be a mental health issue there too.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, we're only really, and of course, going back to what we talked about before, there's a massive shortage of psychiatrists in this country. And mm-hmm. so we're kind of expecting the employer to look out. So that's where you're getting employee assistance programs, mental health programs. The employer is delivering, and mm-hmm. the system isn't. And the employees, I mean, where else can they go? And I mean, but also start to explore what we talked about before as well. Well, which one of the things I can say is in the future, I say there's a growing education gap. Mm-hmm. We're talking about computers. We talked about a digital gap. Those that have computers, those that don't. And going back to my original story, you have to participate in your own rescue. Those that are willing to do that, there's an increasing payoff. There's more and more great literature out there. There's more and more programs. There's more and more things that they can mm-hmm. do, like your programs, like some of your practitioners that you've profiled over the last few weeks. But as things we seem to be trying to dumb down things, mm-hmm. Actually. So
we're trying to dumb things down in our smart society. Everything's smartphone and smart. This, and it just makes us dumber.
One of the things you talked about marketing, I mean, mm-hmm. granola bars. Granola bars are loaded with sugar. They're basically candy. But
basically anything that has packaging is loaded with sugar or basically candy. And health foods.
But we've been sold that these are healthy options. Mm-hmm. So what grocery store is going to make money on fasting? Mm-hmm. Although there is a lot of evidence to say that has enormous benefit for you. Mm-hmm. Not eating. You're going to probably talk about fasting in an entire program, but these are things that I see as as part of the future, an education mm-hmm. gap between those that are willing to invest, and earlier on in their health, and those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think,
well, I know that I've done corporate wellness stuff. I've done like catering events and meditations and yoga and stuff. And they say that for every employer that invests $1 in corporate wellness, they get a $3 return on investment because there's less absenteeism. I don't know if this is true, but this is what the statistics show.
Actually, it's probably, there's two factors. One is sort of the hard dollars, easy dollars to evaluate. Okay, that employee is not there, this thing doesn't get sold or whatever. You can kind of come back and it's probably around $3 to $4. But you also you have to look at it, depending on the industry, they can be up to $6 to $12. But you have to also look at soft costs that are hard to evaluate. So if Jerry's not here, Mike has to take the load. So that creates more issues within the organization. That not only does Jerry not being there, but Mike and the team are more stressed. which leads to more health issues. So I would say there's kind of what you're describing, there's more of a multiplier effect that is affecting employers. And because, they're seeing it.
In what ways? Can you just explain it to people that wouldn't know what that is offhand?
Sure. Well, when somebody goes away on holiday, the rest of the team have to pick up the slack.
Yeah.
Well, what if that person is now on short-term disability for the next 3 or 4 months? Then that group is, you're missing a person. And maybe that person's on disability. You now have to hire a new person, so that you have all those costs of hiring a new person, training the new person, bringing them up to speed that they're actually a useful member of the team. Additional costs in that regard. And then, the employee, maybe he's going through the system and is having challenges getting the care that they need to get back to work. Then also the employer has to accommodate this employee. Maybe they can come back, but they can only come back 50% of the time. Or maybe due to their disability, there's only certain functions that they can do. Well, you have to have accommodation, so you have to also pay for that. And then, of course, as an employer, you may also be paying for additional drugs, additional treatments, or different other things. The fact is the system is delaying it. Maybe you have to look at private alternatives or other alternatives to get the person back to work. So the thing about it is it's hard to have a uniform figure because different industries have different impacts. At a hair salon, of course, you're going to have the other stylists are going to have to take on the customers of the person not there. But if you're also looking at a law firm, well, maybe now a partner has to take on a case that this person has been working on, has to get up to speed, so there's different costs, especially the more, a hockey player not being there, there has to be, it really can cost the team. So it very much depends. But I think your number of 3 to 4 is really low, and I think they're finding that it's much greater than that.
Okay.
But there's also, as you know, we're talking about absenteeism, but there's also presenteeism.
And like ability to actually focus and be productive and.
Exactly. So we know with diabetes, you get brain fog, you get lack of energy, you get these cravings, you get those. So their productivity goes down.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's in the employer's incentive, like the employer and the employee are somewhat aligned. Which our member and the pharmaceutical industry is not necessarily aligned. The employer wants the employee to be healthy, to be present, to be at their best performance. So, and they're now being kind of, some are more aggressive than others, but they're being sort of forced that they're going to have to pick up the cost.
Yeah.
Is that simple? Because the system, one of the things we look for, government will continue to retreat from the healthcare. They just don't have the resources.
And it would just actually be so much more beneficial if people knew what to eat and why. Like, I've even done for like a processed food company, I was a health coach, and it's basically like, stop eating the stuff that you produce. It's just like so obvious to me, but to the average person, they have no idea of what it is because it's become so common and convenient to have everything just come so widely available in this abundance of packaged food that people don't realize that if it comes in a box, it comes from a factory when it should be coming from a farm. And that huge difference is really just so simple in our health.
When we give people a chance to really understand things, oftentimes they will make really positive choices. Like, I think we now have acknowledged that there is no health benefit to alcohol in any form.
Yes. And more and more people are actually, maybe not cutting off completely, but less and less people are
certainly the younger generation. Yeah. And you're now starting to see alcohol-free cocktails, etc. You're giving them, they kind of absorb that information, where where, you've been sort of like, we've been told, for me personally, one of the biggest things was that I didn't need to eat breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
You're sort of told, okay, breakfast.
So we're on these routines that are so out of alignment with our natural rhythm.
Well, I mean, these cereal producers, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, And
so eat our sugar.
Well, this is it. We have the milk that has all the nutrition, but when we combine them together,
comes in all the colors.
Yeah, and then you've got your milk is different colors from all the dye.
Yeah.
But I have a physician friend of mine says that there is nothing, just to use an example, that General Mills produces of any nutritional value whatsoever.
Yeah.
And but when I kind of understood, okay, so I generally start the day fasting. But also we look at where this may have come from as farmers. Well, farmers were getting up at 6 a.m. and working their tails off all morning until lunchtime. So yeah, they needed a big breakfast.
And breakfast is break fast.
Yes, exactly.
We like the first meal of the day after you don't do anything, like you wake up and eat breakfast. You got to break the fast.
But the farmers' breakfasts are often protein heavy.
Yeah.
Eggs, the other things. Yeah. So I think
as opposed to sugar and carbs.
Well, this is it, and well, the French have their croissants, of course, but they walk so much. So we've invented the drive-through. But this is the thing. I think it's so imperative, and I think just to give you a pat on the back, how important these sorts of things are. That you're actually putting a spotlight on some of these tremendous practitioners out there that are coming with new ideas. Like I wrote down here on the education gap, one size fits one size.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we that has been something really positive in the healthcare system, is that we are getting to what was called more precision medicine. Mm-hmm. The idea of looking at the patient. I mean, certainly a lot of
bioindividuality, knowing that one solution isn't going to work the same across all spectrums of people.
Well, when we looked at cancer, back in the day, there was two types of cancer: solid and liquid. Then, like when I kind of started down the path, there's about 261 cancers. Now I would say there's probably 2,600. I mean, I work with a company that has now identified 400 distinct colon cancers and have a cocktail for it. So, genetics is becoming more and more, and that our uniqueness is becoming, we are having more ability to address those things. But one size fits one size. Some of the practices you're talking about, okay, you've have some various meals and suggestions. Well, some may work a little better for somebody else than others. Some have different sleep habits than others, but that's part of, I think, a personal journey, is to kind of experiment and learn a little bit more about healthcare. And that I see that becoming more and more of a future, is that you're on one side, you're getting discouraged because there's a lot of folks that are just, not really challenging, being told what to do, and following these and receiving really bad health outcomes. But you're also getting a larger and larger group that are taking charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's again when I kind of went to my first thing. You have to participate in your own rescue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a quote, since you did a quote at the beginning. It's if you aren't your own doctor, you're a fool, by Socrates.
Well, I mean, he knew something, mm-hmm. and
but that's also very empowering, because it means that nobody should know your body better than you. And by being aware, if you eat something and you're like, wow, what did I eat? Why do I feel like this? And paying attention to that, then you can probably find the trigger.
That's not to diminish the role of the family doctor. I mean,
I'm not trying to diminish that.
No, I didn't take it that you were. I'm just saying that we have to use the family doctor as a tool, as a support, mm-hmm. as opposed to being the answer.
Dependent on them and their...
and they're facing this stuff. They're facing all the new stuff. They're facing their own issues.
Well, and they're also overwhelmed because of so much strain on the healthcare system, because I don't even know how many patients some doctors have. But I have a lot of friends that are doctors, and I have one friend, and she says she has 2,000 patients. Just crazy. 2,000 patients. Imagine being responsible for 2,000 people's health. Like, no wonder they're stressed out and there's not enough family doctors. Like, who wants that,
Well, there's I'm in Kingston, Ontario right now, and I know there's a hotel down the street, and I was talking to one of the workers, and he drives to Cornwall. His doctor's 80 years old. Mm-hmm. And, like Cornwall's about an hour and a half drive from here. And so there was a clinic that opened up.
Oh, so he doesn't get sick a lot, so he doesn't have to drive all that.
Well, that's it. But there was a clinic here that was opening 200 spots, and they had a lineup of 3,000 people. Yeah. So the access to care is becoming more and more of a challenge. And, sort of one of the things that as I start looking at the future, we're going to see more empowerment of allied health services.
Yes, that was the word yesterday I was looking for, allied health services.
So, for example, pharmacists are underutilized support. But, even a person...
Pharmacists can actually write prescriptions now.
Yes.
Certain prescriptions, but at the same time, I feel like that is and I think some nurses do. At the same time, I feel like that's a little bit of a flaw because they don't necessarily have the knowledge of all the symptoms. So they might just, it's the symptom treating. They're like, oh, these are the symptoms, and they don't necessarily know enough about the actual disease. Plus, they're pharmacists, so they're going to be prescribing stuff. Whereas a good doctor, in my opinion, will listen to that and kind of question if prescriptions is necessarily the best solution. Whereas pharmacists have a motive, because they want to sell. That's how they make their money.
Well, there was, yes, they do. They want to sell their business people, absolutely. But they also tend to know the patient. And this is where, again, we go back, you have to own your own rescue. They're a resource. Yeah. And so they have limitations, but they are a resource. So they're one of the factors. I mean, I remember I was on a football trip to Buffalo, and one young man knocked his head on the sidewalk and was sort of, I'm okay. And, he had a headache, and of course, I looked at it and said, "You need to go to ER right now." But sometimes a pharmacist is really where we can actually get someone to talk to. It's the middle of the night or it's something, and
yeah, because doctors also only give you like 5 minutes.
Right, and that's the question, where they're willing to sit and explain the drug, explain what the reaction is. So they are a resource, and and I think they're being used, but more so. But you're starting to see like naturopaths. Mm-hmm. I think they're gaining. I mean, from the benefits industry, they cover naturopaths. A lot of employers do, but I think the medical community has sort of said, well, chiropractors and naturopaths they're not really real.
Yes, there's that little ego thing, like, oh, they're not a real doctor.
Well, I think we need to break down those barriers and accept that they have knowledge as well. But even personal trainers, like there's a personal trainer that I know that was able to identify a person had cancer in his spine. The reason is they see the person all the time. They see the changes. They see why is what and so they can be very useful. Dentists can be very useful in diagnosing healthcare issues as well. So
this is true, because doctors can also miss stuff very easily, misdiagnose stuff as well, because they have such a little time with this wide range of patients that they have. So it's really hard. And I think that's a very good point, is that we need more personalized care.
Well, this conversation would not happen in our healthcare system. Johnny is diagnosed with stage 1 prostate cancer. He gets a call from his oncologist and says, Johnny, I want you to book an hour off. There's about 5 or 6 options that we've got. I'm going to spend time explaining you to each option, what the pluses and minuses are, and then we're going to figure out what your treatment strategy is going to be. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And there's just not the time or resources. So that's where employers can provide those support services.
Okay, so that brings me to the next question, okay? In a perfect, idyllic world, if we were to rebuild the healthcare system from scratch, what would be the first 3 pillars to make it successful and sustainable and serving?
Okay, I'll have a few here. So,
all right. Okay, it can be more than 3, but let's just start small and work our way up.
This is my wish list.
Okay.
The first one is actual patient advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
We have a public system. Our legal system is confrontational. It's set up that way. You've got the state, and you are being accused by the state, and you have your own advocate there who's with you through the process. Our healthcare system is not confrontational until it is. Like, our healthcare system is set up for the system, not for the individual patient. I think that there should be
bureaucracy.
There should be some element to allow for patient advocacy. It allows the patient, because one of the biggest issues with patients is hope. There actually is a system. They actually understand there's a treatment strategy here, and that can be an area, a real problem is, I'm overwhelmed, no one's got time for me, and you just go through a spiral. That's one of my wish lists. The other sort of is, we look at the health system as a system. Without what our health system is actually is a series of hospitals. They all have their own administration, they have their own, and we're only starting to collect data on the entire system. So one of the things I would like to see is the deconstruction of a standard hospital.
And make it more holistic. I mean, like figuratively speaking.
I think that's an element, but if you're having hip surgery, that's something that can be scheduled. That's something that there's a whole protocol of surgery. So why are we putting orthopedics departments in all these different hospitals? Why don't we have a mega orthopedic hospital so that we have the rehab processes, diagnosis processes, this whole protocol, and our guys start just doing hips. The thing about surgery is the more you do, the better you get. And so having more specialized hospitals. We put in. We actually have that in Mexico. They have, like the dermatology, it's like an area, right? My dad had skin cancer. So everything in that area, the subway stop is actually called like dermatology. And so everything around there, so it just makes it very easy for the patients to go and get treatment and get referrals. And so Princess Margaret is a cancer hospital. So the patient can get mental health support, education. They have that too. And nurses. Yeah, like in Havana, there is the Hospital Frank Pais, which is just orthopedics. It makes a lot of sense because you're dealing with rehab, et cetera. So why are you having a hospital where you're having births in one floor and you're having, dangerous diseases in another floor? So I think that we deconstruct the system, but start using data. The other thing I think that I'd like to see is research for its own sake. One of the elements that's a big concern in the States right now is the fact that a lot of great funding is not happening. We use, for example, of oil pulling. Well, the dental industry isn't going to research that. You needed someone independent. Why? That looks at the system as a whole. Well, if oil pulling really works, then that's going to have all kinds of positive impact down the road on throat cancer, on a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to use an example too. A company called OncoSwab. Now, OncoSwab is like a Q-tip up your nose, and it is a screening process for lung cancer. Lung cancer is particularly difficult because it's very difficult to diagnose early on. So this is something, they're going through the FDA approval in the States, et cetera. But this is something, for a system like Ontario, it's very cheap. It screens. If it's accurate, it will save lots of lives. So we're a big province. Could we invest in that company? Could we convince them to come up here? We start doing more research. Like my friends who's doing meditation for post-traumatic stress disorder for soldiers, et cetera. The impact that meditation, you absolutely know, meditation intuitively has all kinds of enormous benefits. But he's taking it as a clinical trial. And they're actually getting soldiers to sleep again. Some of them haven't slept for years.
Mm-hmm.
And the positive
Such
impact.
a powerful tool. So is breath work. He's actually had a few sessions with me, breath work, meditation, and stuff. And I've seen him kind of veer down the more holistic path over the years. Congratulations. And he's really like embodying that in his go-to practices. Where
Yes. Well, that's it. But I mean, you know, we can start to, okay, then what about our system, which is billions of dollars, actually invests, creates more entrepreneurship, but more investment in research for research sake.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was at I was actually Mount Sinai Hospital. And I was sitting beside a scientist at a fundraising dinner, and asked him what he did, and he said, "Well, I study earthworms." Well, if you look at, you know, well, that's a waste of money or whatever. But he started to talk about it. The neurological cells of an earthworm are very similar to humans.
Mm-hmm.
But an earthworm is able to correct or repair. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at paraplegics. We're looking at how do we repair those nerve cells. So all of a sudden it makes a ton more sense. But that's not going to deliver a product anytime soon. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. But wouldn't it be, you know, great if our system did that? So those are kind of that's my wish list.
Okay.
I don't know if that completely answered your question, but
that's okay. It gave us some insights.
Yeah, this is it. That, you know, what would be deconstructing hospitals and looking at a system as a whole is definitely something I want to look at. Mm-hmm. I think some of the, you know, there is a lot of good news in the health system too, though. We are seeing, like for cancer screening, cheaper, earlier, more effective. Mm-hmm. And so,
because even some of the treatments and stuff are very questionable if they're actually helping cancer or spreading it, and you know, we're kind of running out of time, but even that nose swabbing things, like I've read that a lot of them are laced with ethylene propyl, which, you know, is also not good and very close to the blood-brain barrier. I don't really want to get into that right now, but it's just, there's, you know, just because we're given these things as a mainstream, it's really important for us and our sovereignty, especially with regarding our health and our own body, is to question these things. And
well, you're going back to the original premise. Okay, so we're talking about treatment of cancer. We're seeing more cancer. Mm-hmm. So if we started to go back to addressing,
you know, something interesting, sorry to cut you off, but I just find this really fascinating, and it's really, really relevant to my book. So in my book, The Parasite Purge, I actually created a chart because we always treat symptoms, and you said there's like 100 something symptoms and 3,000 different diseases. And so it's so easy for us to look at symptoms and treat them, but it could be something else rather than, so parasites, autoimmune, and cancer, they all have the same symptoms. And we can often just think of something might be an autoimmune, oh, the body's attacking itself, but what if it's actually attacking something that can't be seen, which could be a parasite, you know? And this is why I feel that we really need more integrative systems in healthcare. And I do think that, you know, doctors have a place. I think that naturopaths have a place. I think that breath facilitators have a place. And it's just unfortunate that, there's just not more of it. No. Or it's not supported by the governments, because it could obviously bring more of a return on investment.
We bring back to the original Tommy Douglas.
Yes.
And the original idea behind public health, dollar prevention with a dollar treatment. And that is, you know, we are seeing rises of cancer, but a lot of the reasons the cancer is increasing goes back to the metabolic problems that we're facing. Mm-hmm. And
not only that, I think it's a lot of these unseen, I call them environmental parasites. There are chemicals in everything. It's not just the processed food. There's chemicals in the water. There's chemicals in the air. There's chemicals in the clothes. Like everything is sprayed and is leaching onto us. You know, we go in pools and we're like drowning ourselves in chlorine, which doesn't have a positive effect on the immune system, but it's normalized. And so I think that if we're going to do something, I'm just ranting right now, it just came to me, I wasn't planning on saying this, but like what we're not focusing on is cleansing the body from all this cumulative damage, because we are like sponges. We're sponges in what we hear, what we think, what we, you know, listen to, that's here, but, you know, and consume in like all different levels, right? But nobody's really talking enough about purifying the body.
Exactly. But, you know,
Boom.
going,
That just came through.
going into that, one of the things that I kind of see you as a pioneer is what I call healthcare fusion.
Mm-hmm.
The treatment strategies of the West with the actual knowledge, the holistic approach of the East. You know, I remember when, you know, Toronto was starting to get all these restaurants, and you were seeing fusion restaurants. You were seeing, you know, there was a great restaurant called Ginsberg and Wong, which was a fusion of Chinese and deli and in Toronto. But the idea now we're seeing, I think, a lot of the alternative are now people more recognizing the wisdom in it, in the actual, you know, there is real science behind fasting. There's real science behind many of these practices that have been done for many years. And, you know, and there's
something we just don't have time to go down there, but fasting is very highly recommended. It's also something that Arthur has been doing a lot of lately.
I would imagine you'll do a program on fasting.
I should.
Yes, I think you probably will. But it's just how, you know, when we look at, you know, some of, like, Dr. Jason Fung is a top nephrologist in Toronto, has written a book called The Obesity Code, and he is a big, strong believer in fasting. But also, Peter Attia's book on longevity talks about fasting. He talks of limitations on fasting. So I think fasting is a very personal choice, and I think it's up to the person. What's the best process? What's the best for me? And I think one of the things, Angela, is as people get healthier, you know, you talk about symptoms, they become more sensitive, I think.
It's true. And that's the thing. People don't realize, because we're so polluted, how good the body can actually feel. And that's one of the great things about fasting, is you give your body a chance to clear. And then you're like, wow, I can think more clearly, or wow, I have more energy. And the biggest inflammatories are basically the North American diet. It's wheat, meat, sugar, dairy, and alcohol. And when you're doing an elimination diet, you're supposed to clear one of those for like a week or two to notice the effects on your body. And this is one of these things, like, that's in itself a mini fast, right? But it's giving your body space to
Would
clear.
you also say, like, condiments? You know, ketchup,
condiments are terrible.
barbecue.
Oh, I know. And that's another big part of North America. Like, everybody's got ketchup. Ketchup has more sugar in it than ice cream.
Well, I'm in a part of the world right now that is sort of notorious for its salad dressing, the Thousand Islands salad dressing, which isn't exactly, you know, it's pretty creamy and rich.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like pure mayonnaise, pretty much, and relish.
Yeah.
And ketchup. It's like.
So I mean that is, again, but you are seeing a lot of people are looking at, you know, there's also here a farmer's market. It's actually going on right now, and in the center of town, and it's been getting bigger and bigger, and people are looking, I think, understanding the within 100 kilometers of where they are. Like, I think that is becoming more and more
the localized diet and getting to know your farmers.
You know, but even something so simple. My father is going to have his 94th birthday coming up, and one of the things that he did is, I mean, he was down, you know, had a place in South Carolina, so he's near the ocean, and I think the salt air actually has a big impact on us. Like, these sorts of things that, you know, like walking, like being in nature, like, you know, one of the things you talk about is, you know, being connected to the ground, taking your shoes off, walking on ground, you know, what it can do for you. So
underrated.
but you know, I think that, you know, when we start to look, can we start to put these practices so they become a lot more mainstream? You know, and I think that we've too far. We've just sort of looked, okay, as a pharmaceutical solution, because it's easy, because we can expedite the patient, hand the prescription, off they go. And the employers are getting really frustrated because they're seeing the drug plans that they have, they're out of sight. And they're
actually often creating more problems because they affect the metabolism. Yeah,
where, you know, they're also, I mean, there are some great drugs in development that are, they're six figures. And so maybe we should spend more time at the front end. And that's what employers are seeing that. And absolutely, they're trying to, but of course they're having to, you know, The director of HR is maybe no medical expert, but they're trying to figure out what.
Well, I agree with you in that sense, because they're coming at it from a different. They don't have an agenda. Their agenda is to basically help their own business, which would be benefited more by healthier people, right? And so I think that you're right in that they are the ones that kind of might be the frontiers in advocating for more of these allied cares or holistic practices that have longer term, more affordable benefits that are easier to facilitate.
Well, they're more experimentation. Maybe the president of the company had a benefit from something and says, okay, I'm going to share this with my employees. But of course there's a lot of, but that it is interesting though, that it's employers that are driving the innovation, not the insurance companies, not the government, not the pharmaceutical company, because the employer wants to see, hey, I want to reduce my cost. And but I want healthier employees because that helps my organization. And obviously they're not entirely noble here. There is a profit incentive, but they're also been forced by process of elimination. No one else, right? So
that's nice.
I think also one of the things that we need to kind of allow space for more so is community healthcare.
Yes, I agree. I'm going to have to cut you off there because we're a little over time. But thank you so much, Arthur, for sharing your vision, your wisdom, and your vast expertise and your dedication and obvious passion to reshaping healthcare for the better. Your work is a reminder that innovation, compassion, and collaboration can truly change the system from the inside out. And for everyone tuning in today's conversation, if it sparked any ideas, shaped your perspective, or inspired you to think differently about health, wellness, I encourage you to connect with Arthur. He is a health advisor at Go To Doctor, and you can explore his work and possibly get your own consultations and work healthcare plans in effect. If this episode moved you, please like, share, and subscribe, and follow me, the Chakra Goddess, on Instagram and TikTok for more conscious conversations and full spectrum nourishment for your mind, body, and soul. So until then, stay tuned, stay open, and stay grounded, and keep feeding your chakras. Peace, love, and luminous blessings. Thank you, thank you, thank you.